as close as any father and son could hope to be.
I'm lucky to be a part of what he is, what he stands for, and what he's doing right now.
This is the father of the most famous athlete on the planet, Michael Jordan. And on his 57th birthday, he was an unidentified dead man in the swamp in the middle of nowhere.
In 1993, Chicago and the whole world was shocked at the terrible news that James Jordan, the father of Michael, had been killed in North Carolina. 2 men are in prison for that crime, which was committed when they were teenagers. There's a new 5-part docuseries on IMDb TV that takes a close look at whether one of them may have only been an accessory to the murder.
It's called The Moment of Truth, and the director of the series joins us now, Matthew Paniciero. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
So can you go back and talk about the shock of that moment, and for anyone who may not remember, what actually happened?
Yes, I mean, it's a crime that was reported on. I grew up in North Carolina where the crime took place, and it was a crime that was reported on locally in far greater detail than it was ever reported on a national level. James Jordan was leaving a funeral in Wilmington, North Carolina, traveling back to Charlotte, North Carolina, where the family now lived, and stopped in an area called Lumberton to pull over to the side of the road. And the public narrative from that point was that there was a robbery gone wrong, and 2 teenagers were charged and convicted with the crime of murder.
Yeah, and so you get 2 young men who are kind of these low-life, sort of low-level, getting in trouble. Murder's a big step up. And how is it that Green takes the major fall for this? Why? It's not like his partner Demery has a ton of credibility. So how did Green get the shaft on this?
One of the things we detail in the series is the interrogation that takes place, and you see, you know, both of the young men, or you hear with the actual audio from the interrogation, both of them being questioned and kind of being pitted against each other. And ultimately, Larry decides to take a plea deal and plead guilty to the crime, but say that Daniel was the one who actually pulled the trigger. And as part of that deal, he testifies against Daniel at trial. And the law enforcement felt confident in that decision, so they moved forward with it.
I believe we do hear from Green in the documentary. Curious if you reached out to Michael Jordan and his thoughts, if he did respond at all on being a part of this, or I know in the past he said that he didn't want any part of talking or asking questions to these 2 men.
Yes, we reached out to Michael through a spokesperson, and they respectfully declined to participate in the series, and we respect their wishes, so we didn't communicate with them after that point. I think, you know, one of the things is a lot of times when you're a public figure, certain aspects of your life need to remain private, and the Jordan's family decision to grieve in private is absolutely their own right, and we wanted to respect that.
Is it true that Green had a pretty good alibi? And how does that play into this?
Well, it plays into the narrative, I think, very significantly. You know, at trial, there were multiple eyewitnesses that state that Daniel did not leave a house party that was taking place at the time when the murder took place. You know, Daniel did not testify at his trial under advisement of his counsel at the time. So audiences will really get to hear his side of the story, and in many sides, both sides of the story in detail for the first time by watching this series.
Can you update us as to where Demery and Green are right now and the status of their, what's happening with their cases?
Yes, Larry and Daniel are both still in prison. Larry has been granted parole to be released in 2023, almost 30 years to the day that they were arrested. And Daniel has continued to appeal the decision of his trial and is seeking a new evidentiary hearing. The North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence has taken his case on, and they are appealing to try to get an evidentiary hearing, but the state of North Carolina has been unwilling to give that to them up until now, at least.
There has been some corruption in this county. How did that impact the case, and is that what is standing in the way of justice at this point?
In the series, very early in the series, we felt that it was very important for audiences to have an understanding of the history of Robeson County, which is very fractured, and there's a lot of racial injustice and a pattern of misinformation in evidence from this law enforcement department, especially at that time. There was a sting operation called Operation Tarnished Badge in the mid-2000s, where much of this corruption was brought to light, and many deputies were arrested as part of that. I do not believe that contributes to the current appeal process, but it definitely plays a major impact in how this case was investigated, and we go into great detail about that in the show.
All right, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Moment of Truth streaming now on IMDb TV, Amazon's premium free streaming service. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you.